Hello, this is Daphne, and I am reading the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, June the 13th. We begin with the weather. Today, high of 76, mostly sunny, pleasant, breezy in the afternoon. Tonight, low of 62, partly cloudy. Tomorrow, Friday, high of 79, low of 65, breezy, humid, a heavy thunderstorm in the afternoon. Saturday, high of 74, low of 56, breezy in the morning, clouds and sun. Sunday, high of 74, low of 60, mostly sunny and nice. And Monday, high of 75, low of 65, partial sunshine. Today the sun rose at 5:06 and it will set at 8:17, giving us 15 hours and 11 minutes of daylight. On to the lottery. For the numbers game, the midday drawing from Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 2, 5, 6, 4. Again, for the midday drawing for Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 2, 5, 6, 4. And the evening drawing numbers are 4, 8, 4, 8. Again, for the numbers game for the evening drawing yesterday, Wednesday, the 12th of June, the numbers are 4, 8, 4, 8. For mass cash drawn Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 6, 19, 23, 26, 35. Again, mass cash from Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 6, 19, 23, 26, and 35. For Powerball, drawn yesterday, Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 19, 30, 31, 61, 62, and the Powerball is 21. Again, for Powerball, drawn yesterday, the 12th of June, the numbers are 19, 30, 31, 61, 62, with the Powerball of 21. For Mega Millions, drawn on Tuesday, June the 11th, the numbers are 1, 5, 7, 22, 24, and the Mega Ball is 8. Again, for Mega Millions, for Tuesday, June the 11th, the numbers are 1, 5, 7, 22, 24, and the Mega Ball is 8. For Mega Bucks, drawn Wednesday, June the 12th, the numbers are 3, 10, 19, 26, 33, 37. Again, Mega Bucks drawn June the 12th. The numbers are 3, 10, 19, 26, 33, and 37. And Lucky for Life drawn Wednesday, June the 12th. The numbers are 3, 12, 15, 19, 34, with the lucky ball of 6. Again, Lucky for Life, Wednesday, June the 12th. The numbers are 3, 12, 15, 19, 34, with the lucky ball of 6. Our top story for the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, June the 13th, is Brewster Select Board candidate picks up a vote after recount. And there is a large picture with that, captioned Brewster Select Board candidate Laurel Labdon watches on Tuesday at Town Hall as workers scrutinize ballots during a recount for the Select Board race from the May 28th town election. The recount was the second held in a Cape Cod town in a week. This is reported by Heather McCarran. A recount of ballots cast for the Select Board during last month's town election, which resulted in a hair's breadth separation between candidates Amanda Bebrin and Laurel Labdon, has ended with a slightly different vote count, but no change of outcome. Town Clerk Colette Williams, on Tuesday, led the recount in the lower level of Town Hall, with the town's attorney and Police Chief Heath Eldridge standing by. Williams had help from town clerks and assistant town clerks from 13 Cape towns, as well as 3 local registrars, who spent 3.5 hours going through the 2,868 ballots cast at the May 28th town election by hand. Bebrin ended up with an extra vote that brought her total to 1,459, while Labdin lost a vote and ended up with 1,454, slightly widening the gap between the two candidates to 5 votes. The recount in Brewster was the second in a week. On Cape Cod, on Monday in Bourne, a 2-hour recount of write-in votes for a school committee seat was held. The election results in Bourne also did not change. The recount was requested by Labdin, who initially missed earning a seat on the town's top governing board by just 3 votes, edged out by Bebrin. Before Tuesday's recount, in the preliminary election results, Labdin had tallied 1,455 votes to Bebrin's 1,458 votes for the select board seat vacated by Carrie Hoffman, who ran an uncontested campaign for a 3-year term on the Nauset Regional School District Committee. Select Board Vice Chair Mary Chafee rounded up 1,685 votes for a return to her seat on the board. After the recount, her total number of votes remained the same. Williams explained that Bebrin's extra vote showed up on a ballot that was not properly filled out. So, quote, she picked up a vote that before the recount was considered a blank, close quote. She said this can happen if a voter does not completely fill in the spot indicating their selection of a candidate, but instead circles it or makes a check mark that the automatic counting machines can't register. Meanwhile, the recount also turned up a ballot that the voting machine counted twice on May 28th. In Precinct 1, a ballot got jammed, and when I dislodged it, it was ripped, Williams said of the election day. Quote, I thought the machine said it was not counted, but it actually counted for Laurel twice. Although the outcome did not change, Labdin said with such a close election, the recount was still, quote, a worthwhile endeavor, if for no other reason than to assure residents that the elections are counted accurately and fairly and, of course, to remind voters that every vote counts, close quote. Bebrin said the recount outcome, quote, is a validation of the integrity and accuracy of Brewster's election season, close quote, and she thanked the town clerk and other staff and volunteers who participated. Quote, I'm excited to be Brewster's newest select board member, she said. It's a productive and experienced board, and I'm ready to get to work on all the interesting and complex initiatives we have underway, close quote. It's the second time Labdin has called for a review of the ballots. Last year, when she challenged Chair Ned Chatelain, Labdin also narrowly missed earning a place on the board by just 6 votes. The 2023 recount also maintained the outcome but slightly changed the final tally, narrowing the gap to 5. Labdin picked up an extra vote last year for the same reason Bebrin picked up an extra vote this year. A voter did not properly fill in the space for Labdin on one ballot, resulting in the vote being counted by the automatic ballot counter as not filled in. Williams on Tuesday emphasized the importance of following voting instructions carefully and filling ballots out properly. For mail-in ballots, it's also important to pay close attention to the deadlines, she said, noting she received some ballots late and could not include them in the count, including one that was postmarked on the day after the election and that just arrived in her office on Monday, 14 days after the election. This year was Labdin's third outing as a select board candidate. In 2018, she was among 5 candidates for 2 seats on the board. She came in 4th in that race, but the results were not as close as they were last year and this year. At this time, Labdin said she has no plans to run again, quote, despite an amazing amount of encouragement to run again next year. I will never say never, but at this time I have no intention of running for a contested elected position in the foreseeable future, she said. Instead, Labdin said she will focus on her work as chair of the Brewster Housing Authority Commissioners Board, quote, and do my part to try to ease the housing crisis in Brewster, close quote. She also plans to apply for the Sea Camps Advisory Committee, with, quote, hope that the Select Board will seriously consider my widespread support in town and allow me to represent all of the ideas and concerns that so many have shared with me over the last few years by appointing me to this committee, close quote. Beside the recounts in 2023 and this week, the most recent recount held in Brewster was in 2019, when voters passed a 309,000 general override by just 1 vote. After the 2019 recount, the difference was still 1 vote, and the decision stood. Sei whales, humpbacks, and fin whales seen south of Nantucket, reported by Kaylee Walker. An aerial survey amounted to 161 whale sightings south of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket on May 25th, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration survey report. While there were 161 sightings, that does not necessarily indicate the number of individual whales, said Terry Frady, Chief in Research Communications at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in a comment Wednesday. The plane and whales are both moving constantly, so observers could sight and count an individual whale more than once. Of the sightings, 21 were fin whales, 26 were humpback whales, and 93 were sei whales. There were smaller numbers of killer whales, minke whales, North Atlantic right whales, and sperm whales. Whales were exhibiting feeding behavior, according to the report. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration will likely be able to identify the individual North Atlantic right whales and maybe the humpbacks, Frady said. Frady said it's not typical for there to be a lot Frady said it's typical for there to be a lot of whales in the area at this time, but catching this many in one flight is unusual. People can see whale sightings in the area at WhaleMap. New England Aquarium, Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life Airplane Surveyors, also reported on Wednesday seeing 2 right whales on June the 1st, about 40 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. On May 9th, the aquarium surveyors saw 3 white right whales feeding in and near shipping lanes south of the islands, including Magic, a 42-year-old female who has given birth to 7 calves. Southern Baptist ban on women pastors fails in historic vote, reported by Leon Adams in Nashville. And there are 2 photographs with this picture. The first is 2 women holding up placards, Heather Deal left and Nikki Hardiman with the Baptist Women in Ministry, protest for the right to women to be clergy Tuesday outside the Southern Baptist Convention in Indianapolis. And the picture below it is of another woman who is reading. Meredith Stone, executive director with the Baptist Women in Ministry, reads community prayers of solidarity and affirmation as the group protests Tuesday outside the Southern Baptist Convention in Indianapolis. The Southern Baptist Convention rejected Wednesday a constitutional ban on women being pastors, a major victory for those within the nation's largest Protestant denomination seeking to maintain local church autonomy and soften what many considered a growing antagonism toward women in ministry. The narrow outcome resolved a 2-year political dispute about church policy, though it might not subdue the ensuing debates about women's roles in the church. The proposed amendment was by far the most animating issue headed to this year's SBC annual meeting, one that even colored other decision-making, including the election for SBC president. If the measure passed, more churches were expected to voluntarily leave the denomination. For some, it would be due to a message downplaying women's contributions to the church, while others saw the SBC becoming overbearing about certain doctrinal beliefs. Quote, "Is this amendment necessary for the convention to respond when churches in our convention act in a way contrary to our complementarian doctrine?" North Carolina pastor Spence Shelton said in the only speech against the measure during the brief floor debate. Quote, "We showed last year we have an effective mechanism," Shelton said. "It allows us to act with conviction and unity when it comes to this issue." Close quote. Had the measure succeeded, it would have allowed SBC leaders to more strictly enforce doctrinal beliefs surrounding the role of women in ministry by disfellowshipping churches that do not adhere to those standards. But even without the constitutional change, the SBC has disfellowshipped 7 churches over these standards. The most high-profile cases were that of Southern California megachurch Saddleback Church and the Fern Creek Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, which both unsuccessfully appealed their ouster at the 2023 SBC annual meeting. It was the second consecutive vote on the measure, commonly called the, quote, law amendment, bearing the namesake of the original petitioner, Virginia pastor Mike Law, after receiving initial approval at the 2023 SBC annual meeting in New Orleans. During the floor debate, Law sought to impress upon the convention the proposal is, quote, not about women in ministry, it's specifically about women in the pastoral office. "We gladly celebrate the myriad women who serve the church in many essential ways," Law said. But Law also said others' perception of the SBC based on this debate shouldn't compromise Southern Baptists' commitment to their understanding of what Scripture says about women's role in the church. Quote, "Our culture may see this prohibition as harsh, but our God is all-wise," Law said. "And God wrote God's word for the flourishing of both men and women," close quote. On Tuesday, the convention overwhelmingly approved the ouster of First Baptist Church Alexandria in Virginia for holding to an egalitarian view of women in ministry instead of complementarianism, referring to a belief that men and women have different assigned roles. Quote, "First Baptist Alexandria stands before you as a testament that we can maintain a fruitful partnership with churches that take a different stance on women in ministry," said FBC Alexandria senior pastor Robert Stevens during a floor debate Tuesday afternoon. Local church autonomy is an important belief among Southern Baptists, and the idea of partnership or cooperation was a major theme going into this week's SBC annual meeting, mostly due to the law amendment. Critics warned against the SBC becoming overly prescriptive about certain doctrine for autonomous churches, while proponents said cooperation shouldn't come at the risk of adherence to certain tenets. SBC President Bart Barber and the SBC Cooperation Group, an ad hoc task force that Barber appointed to study the denomination's standards of affiliating with churches, admonished the convention to extend a spirit of generosity across differences. But even if Southern Baptists took that message to heart, the resolution to this debate came down to cold, hard numbers. Messengers voted 61% in favor of the law amendment on Wednesday morning, falling short of the required two-thirds majority for constitutional amendments. Specifically with the debate on women's authority in the church, the fallout of Wednesday's decision likely won't deviate much from the current climate. Quote, "There's a lot to grieve. There's a lot to be angry about," said Julie Tay, a speaker at a virtual prayer vigil on Monday night, organized by Baptist Women in Ministry as an act of solidarity with Southern Baptist women. Quote, "It's a call to protest, and it's a call to demonstration," close quote. Baptist Women in Ministry, a nonprofit with partners across various Baptist denominations, organized both the prayer vigil and a demonstration outside the Indiana Convention Center as the SBC met. Quote, "We swallowed our grief when we were told we weren't ready to lead," Speaker Angie Hong said during the prayer vigil on Monday. Quote, "These untruths and these lies have hurt us. These lies have wounded us, made us question ourselves, and worse, made us question the God who created us in God's image," close quote. If anything, the past couple years have cemented the means by which the SBC can exclude churches with women as pastors. The mechanism the denomination uses to initiate that exclusion, a group that evaluates reports against churches called the SBC Credentials Committee, was initially reformatted in 2019 to only address sexual abuse and racism in churches. This conflict over policy limiting church leadership to men isn't exclusive to the SBC. The Presbyterian Church in America, a smaller yet similarly influential evangelical Christian denomination, is set to deliberate a legislative proposal to add a clause to the denomination's policy that, quote, "only qualified men may be invited to preach in any of the churches under our care," close quote. Johnson & Johnson to pay $700 million in talc baby powder lawsuit, reported by Bayless Wagner and Minna Arshad. And there is a photograph of a counter shelf in a store with baby powder. And the caption is, "Johnson & Johnson baby powder is now largely made from cornstarch rather than talc." The company did not admit guilt as part of the settlement announced Tuesday. Johnson & Johnson will pay $700 million to settle a lawsuit by dozens of states that accused the pharmaceutical industry giant of intentionally misleading customers about the safety of its talc-based baby powder, officials announced Tuesday. J&J sold products with talc for more than 100 years before discontinuing them in 2023 after facing thousands of lawsuits. The coalition of 43 attorneys found Johnson & Johnson failed to disclose the talc sometimes contained asbestos, and that asbestos is harmful and can lead to cancer. Johnson & Johnson baby powder is now largely made from cornstarch rather than talc. The company did not admit guilt as part of the settlement. Quote, "We have reached a landmark settlement with Johnson & Johnson, ensuring that the company will abide by the law and take effective steps to protect customers from potentially hazardous ingredients," close quote. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said in a statement Tuesday. Attorneys General for Texas, Florida, and North Carolina led the multi-state litigation, in which judicial approval of the settlement deal is still pending. The talcum powder lawsuit was joined by Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Washington, D.C., Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington State, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. The payout, announced Tuesday, is the largest J&J has agreed to in a years-long string of lawsuits alleging its products caused serious and sometimes deadly illnesses. A Chicago jury in April awarded $45 million to the family of a woman who died from mesothelioma, a cancer linked to asbestos exposure. Teresa Garcia's family alleged her frequent use of J&J's talc-based products led to the fatal diagnosis. In New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson was ordered to pay $186 million to 4 plaintiffs in a 2020 lawsuit alleging baby powder caused their cancer. And earlier this month, an Oregon woman who said she developed mesothelioma from using J&J's talc-based products was awarded $260 million in damages, WTVR reported. Johnson & Johnson still faces tens of thousands of individual lawsuits alleging that talc-containing products led consumers to develop severe health issues, according to the Security and Exchange Commission. A class action suit that accuses the company of having hidden the dangers of talc products from shareholders is also pending. Johnson & Johnson has made several attempts to resolve the cases by placing a subsidiary that it created to contain its talc-related liabilities into bankruptcy, Reuters reported, with as much as $11 billion earmarked for potential payments. Courts have not approved such efforts. Quote, the company continues to pursue several paths to achieve a comprehensive and final resolution of the talc litigation. Eric Haas, Johnson & Johnson Worldwide Vice President of Litigation, wrote in a statement Tuesday. Talc is a naturally occurring mineral, sometimes found in mines with asbestos, which can lead to contamination. Johnson & Johnson has denied that its baby powder contains asbestos. Juneteenth on Cape Cod. What's open? What's closed? Reported by Eric Williams. Juneteenth, National Independence Day, a federal holiday, will be observed on Wednesday, June 19th. According to the U.S. Library of Congress, quote, Juneteenth commemorates June 19, 1865, the date Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and delivered General Order No. 3, announcing the end of legalized slavery in Texas. Historically, it has been a holiday celebrated by people of African descent in the United States, as well as people in Canada, Jamaica, Nigeria, the United Kingdom, and other countries around the world, close quote. Juneteenth is a state holiday in Massachusetts. Many Americans will have a day off from work, and some businesses and restaurants could be closed to observe the holiday. Let's take a look at what will be open and closed around Cape Cod on the Juneteenth holiday. Post offices on Cape Cod will be closed on Juneteenth, Wednesday, June 19th, and the U.S. Postal Service will not deliver mail or packages. UPS and FedEx services will operate as usual. June 19th, National Independence Day, is a Federal Reserve bank holiday. Folks on Cape Cod should expect that banks will be closed, although ATM services will be available. Businesses can decide whether to be open or closed on Juneteenth. The best practice is to call stores or restaurants you would like to visit on Juneteenth and inquire about operating hours. Most supermarkets and liquor stores will be open on Cape Cod. Public schools and school district offices will be closed on Juneteenth. The Cape Cod Canal Visitor Center will be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Juneteenth. It is located at 60 Ed Moffett Drive in Sandwich. All Cape Cod National Seashore Visitor Centers will be open on Juneteenth. Seashore beaches will be open. Weekday entrance fees at seashore beaches are not collected through June the 21st, so entrance on Juneteenth will be free. Weekend entrance fees are currently in place. We've reached the middle of our broadcast when normally we share the obituaries in the paper. There are none printed today, Thursday, the 13th of June. Avoid sunburn with these summer safety tips, reported by Amanda Wallace in New Jersey. As we head into summer beach weekends, it's important to keep in mind the risks that come with long-term sun exposure, the importance of sunscreen, and some sun safety tips that can make your time outside a bit more enjoyable. Sun exposure can be enjoyable and even beneficial in terms of vitamin D. Plus, who doesn't love a summer tan? However, too much can be dangerous, as overexposure to ultraviolet radiation from the sun can lead to sunburn, skin cancer, premature aging of the skin, cataracts and other eye damage, and immune system suppression, according to the Environmental Protection Agency. According to the Food and Drug Administration, skin cancer is the most common form of cancer in the United States, with an estimated 1.4 billion people living with melanoma of the skin in the U.S. in 2021. Having a history of 5 or more sunburns can increase and even double your risk of developing melanoma, per the Skin Cancer Foundation. People of all skin colors are at risk for sunburn and the other effects of UV radiation. However, those with pale skin, blonde, red, or light brown hair, or anybody who has had skin cancer or has a family member who has had skin cancer should be extra careful, per the FDA. Additionally, some medications can increase sun sensitivity. Thankfully, sunburns and other issues that can come along with overexposure to the sun are largely preventable, and there are many things you can do to safely enjoy your time outside this summer, whether at the pool, at the beach, on a hike, or anywhere else. Here are some sun safety tips from the EPA for a sunny but safe summer. Generously apply a broad-spectrum sunscreen with an SPF of at least 15 to all exposed skin, 15 minutes before going outside. Broad-spectrum sunscreen can provide protection from ultraviolet A, UVA, and ultraviolet B, UVB rays. Reapply sunscreen every 2 hours and after swimming or sweating. Wear protective clothing, such as sunglasses, wide-brimmed hats, long-sleeve shirts, or pants. Seek shade when possible and try to avoid direct sunlight between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. when the sun's UV rays are strongest. Use extra caution near water, snow, and sand, which all reflect the sun's rays, increasing your chance of burning. Check the UV index before heading outside. Avoid sun tanning and tanning beds. Make sure you are reading the labels on your sunscreen carefully to, quote, ensure you get the most potential benefit from sunscreen use, says the FDA. Any sunscreen labeled broad spectrum had to pass the FDA's requirements. If the sunscreen is not broad spectrum or is a lower SPF than 15, the packaging will carry a warning that says, quote, skin cancer, skin aging alert. Spending time in the sun increases your risk of skin cancer and early skin aging. This product has been shown only to help prevent sunburn, not skin cancer or early skin aging, close quote. Additionally, manufacturers may not make claims that their sunscreens are water or sweat-proof, provide instant protection, or provide protection for more than 2 hours without reapplying. Sunscreens can only be legally marketed in lotion, cream, stick, gel, oil, butter, paste, spray, and powder. All other forms, such as wipes or body washes, cannot be legally marketed. And for some local high school sports, Nantucket and Sandwich will play for state title match this weekend. This is boys lacrosse. And there are two wonderful pictures. One is Nantucket goalie Jeremy Jenkinson and Hunter Struzny celebrate after beating Swampscott 9-3 in the Division 4 Final Four boys lacrosse match on Tuesday in Weymouth. And below that, Sandwich players Devin Mahoney and Luke Rogers leap to celebrate after defeating Norwell 9-3 in the Division 4 Final Four lacrosse match. This is reported by Courtney Jacobs from Weymouth. To say lacrosse on the Cape and Islands has come a long way may be an understatement. 4 boys lacrosse teams, Sandwich, Nantucket, Falmouth, and Nauset, made the Final Four in this year's MIAA state tournament. Cape lacrosse is pretty awesome, and it's on the map. Nobody can argue that, Sandwich head coach Mike McNeil said. History will be made this weekend in the first ever boys lacrosse state championship game between 2 Cape and Islands teams. Quote, it's almost a Cinderella story, 2 Cape Fields in the final, McNeil said. Nantucket and Sandwich both picked up victories over their Division 4 Final Four opponents at Weymouth High School on Tuesday. The number 1 Whalers defeated number 13 Swampscott 9-3, while the number 3 Blue Knights ironically beat number 2 Norwell by an identical score of 9-3. The two will play each other this weekend for the state championship. Here's how both teams made it to this historic stage. Nantucket versus Swampscott. It's one thing to be the top-seeded team, but it's another to show why you're number 1. The Whalers showed why they are at the top of the mountain in Division 4 against Swampscott. Nantucket outscored its first 3 playoff opponents 54-10, and it was no different for their 4th opponent. The Whalers held Swampscott to 1 goal in the first half, while the offensive side found the back of the net 5 times with 4 different scorers. Quote, we really don't have any superstars, and our scoring spread out pretty well, Nantucket head coach Sam Aloisi said. Quote, there's no real weakness, I think, and an opponent can attack, close quote. Nantucket led 5-1 at halftime, but there was still a second half to be played. Sandwich versus Norwell. The Blue Knights and Clippers are no strangers to each other, as they are both in the South Shore League. Sandwich defeated Norwell 9-7 in their lone regular season matchup for the first time since 2018. If the Blue Knights wanted a spot in the state championship, they would have to beat a team twice that had their number for 5 straight seasons. Sandwich All-American goalie Shane Corcoran said, it's a good thing when you play a team more than once during a season. It definitely helped a lot because I knew who the shooters were and what side they preferred to shoot, Corcoran said. Corcoran may have a point, as he finished with 16 saves in the Blue Knights' win. Whether he had to jump, dive, get on one knee, do a split, or any other way of stopping a goal you can think of, he made the right move at the right time. Quote, he played a good game. He's like a cucumber. Cool. He's just calm, McNeil said. He's just ready to go and stays humble. He's an incredible role model for the younger players on the team. He's a special player. Since Sandwich joined the SSL this season, they did not play against Nantucket during the regular season this year. Nantucket and Sandwich will face off against each other for the first time since May 11, 2023, when Nantucket won 5-3. Quote, that adds a little fuel to it, in my opinion, McNeil said about Nantucket's win over them last season. Sandwich also defeated Nantucket 13-4 for a season split. That's in the past, and the stakes weren't as big as a state championship. The Blue Knights are in the state finals game for the 3rd consecutive season. They came up short in the last 2 years, but now they have another shot at redemption. Quote, I know last year's state championship, we were really slow coming out, Rogers said. Cohasset beat us in the regular season, and we thought they were a little better than us, but this season we know we're better than Nantucket, close quote. The Whalers are also looking for some redemption as they have been knocked out in the round of 8 the last 2 seasons, which included a loss to Sandwich in 2022. Quote, it's going to take a lot of hard work, and we have to focus mentally and keep playing our game, and we'll win, Chambers said. This weekend, one of these 2 teams will make history as the first Cape and Islands team to defeat another Cape and Islands team in the boys lacrosse state finals game. Wellfleet needs office space. Is this $1.7 million property the answer? Reported by Denise Coffey. To buy or not to buy? That's one question on a 2-question warrant facing Wellfleet voters. They will be asked whether they want to acquire property at 1035 Cemetery Road for office space and storage at a special town meeting next week. The $1.7 million acquisition of the Gestalt International Center on 2.2 acres, with its tables, chairs, whiteboards, and sound system, 4,484 square feet of space, Title V approved septic and working HVAC system, would give the town space for its employees and records. Quote, we're running out of space and looking to the future, Town Administrator Thomas Garino said during a community forum on Monday. This is just such a unique and exceptional opportunity at below market rate that we couldn't not bring it to you. Close quote. There is inadequate office space for current employees and those yet to be hired for open positions. The purchase price represents a cost of $379.13 per square feet. If the town had to build new space, those costs would range from between $500 and $700 per square foot, according to Guarino. Inspections found no leaks, no water damage, and 4,400 square feet of dry storage space in the basement. The building is accessible and ADA compliant. A 1,500-gallon septic tank is in good shape and has a 500-gallon per day capacity and is more than adequate for the 50-seat capacity, according to Guarino. Town officials are considering renting out meeting space for other organizations. The parking lot will need some work, Guarino said. Bonding the purchase of the Gestalt Center will not add debt, but it will not reduce the tax rate. The town's overall debt payment will drop about $1.98 million over the next 2 years. As that debt comes off, this added debt will mean the tax ratio will remain the same, Guarino said. The town's debt ratio is currently 9.68%. Wellfleet is carrying a, quote, pretty heavy debt load for a town of 4,000 people, Guarino admitted. The town has a major sewer project expenses coming down the pike. When they will come due, how much they will cost, and what the tax impact will be are unclear, Guarino said. Article 2, petition article by the Wellfleet Food Pantry. This is a vote to authorize the town to sell the South Wellfleet Fire Station to the Wellfleet Food Pantry. The nonprofit must leave its present location by the end of the year. The fire station represents a location with enough size to continue providing food and personal care items to residents in need. However, the nonprofit has concerns about the fire station location. While the building is owned by the town, it is in the Cape Cod National Seashore. Since the warrant was printed, the nonprofit has been in discussions with town officials about leasing land at the Adult Community Center for temporary space. Eventually, they'd like to seek permits and plans to build a permanent space at the location. The Select Board will discuss that possibility at their June 20th meeting. In the meantime, the nonprofit wants the fire station as a backup. The tax impact would be nil, according to Pantry spokesperson Cindy Batchelder. The nonprofit will pay all lease and permitting fees. The special town meeting will be held June 17th at 6 p.m. at the Wellfleet Elementary School. A special town election will be held June 18th from noon to 7 p.m. at the Council on Aging. Here is a lovely photograph of a young woman doing some planting at one of the Hyannis shanties. And here's the caption. AmeriCorps Cape Cod member Sarah Lawson plants mint Wednesday morning around one of the artist shanties in Bismore Park in Hyannis. The members worked with the town of Barnstable to install 125 plants around the park and 85 mint plants around the artist's shanties, said Alice Marcus Krieg, grants coordinator for the town. Quote, "It's such an amazing relationship," she said about working with AmeriCorps Cape Cod. AmeriCorps Cape Cod is in its 25th year, and members have served more than 1 million hours in the community throughout the years. Jury says Chiquita liable for deaths. Company paid violent organizations in Colombia. Reported by Tao Nguyen. Banana company Chiquita Brands International has been found liable for financing a far-right Colombian paramilitary group and ordered to pay $38.3 million in damages to the families of 8 men killed by the group during the country's civil war, a federal jury in Florida decided on Monday. The landmark ruling comes after 17 years of legal proceedings against the corporate giant for those victimized by the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, AUC, the plaintiff's attorneys said. In 2007, Chiquita pled guilty to one count of engaging in transactions with a, quote, specially designated global terrorist, and, close quote, and was ordered to pay a $25 million fine, the U.S. Department of Justice said at the time. The company was accused of making illegal payments to the AUC, a paramilitary group that was known for mass killings, kidnapping civilians, and mutilating their corpses. The case, originally filed by the nonprofit Earth Rights International in 2007, was followed by several other cases in 2008, the nonprofit said. A team of law firms across the United States have been representing over 5,000 Colombian victims in the proceeding, and additional trials for other victims will follow in July, according to attorneys. Monday's verdict, which came after a 6-week trial and 2 days of deliberations, marks the first time a major U.S. corporation was found liable for its role in human rights abuses abroad, attorneys said. Quote, "This verdict sends a powerful message to corporations everywhere. Profiting from human rights abuses will not go unpunished. These families, victimized by armed groups and corporations, asserted their power and prevailed in the judicial process," Marco Simons, Earth Rights International General Counsel and one of the plaintiff's attorneys, said in a statement. The 8 plaintiffs, which include surviving family members of 8 men who were murdered by the AUC, alleged that Chiquita paid nearly $2 million to the violent militant group. The group was also accused of, quote, facilitating shipment of arms, ammunition, and drugs, despite knowing that the AUC was an illegal organization engaged in a reign of terror, law firm Cohen, Milstein, Sellers, and Toll said in a statement. Attorneys for Chiquita have said the company had made those illegal payments in the late 1990s and early 2000s to protect its Colombian employees from further violence, the Palm Beach Post, part of USA Network, reported. The plaintiff's attorneys said Chiquita's support of the AUC violated both U.S. and Colombian law. During the trial, they argued that the company willingly worked with the AUC to protect its profits and to suppress employee unrest. On Monday, a federal jury in Florida ruled that Chiquita knowingly provided substantial assistance to the militant group in the form of cash payments or other means of support to a degree sufficient to create a foreseeable risk of harm. The 8 men were killed by the AUC, and Chiquita was unable to prove that its support for the group was a result of impending harm to the company or its employees, the jury said. Quote, "The verdict does not bring back the husbands and sons who were killed, but it sets the record straight and places accountability for funding terrorism where it belongs, at Chiquita's doorstep." Anganiza Friesman, a lawyer at law firm Cohen, Milstein, Sellers & Toll, said in a statement. While the plaintiffs' attorneys celebrated Monday's verdict, they noted that the broader litigation against Chiquita includes hundreds of other victims whose, quote, "cases may be resolved through additional trials or an eventual settlement," close quote. The AUC is a paramilitary group in Colombia that was active between 1997 and 2006, according to Stanford University's Mapping Militants project. The group was a consolidation of multiple self-defense groups in the country that carried out brutal kidnappings and assassinations. Though the group disbanded in 2006, small groups and individuals have committed attacks while claiming to be the AUC, the Mapping Militants Project said. The AUC was designated by the U.S. government as a foreign terrorist organization in September 2001, and then as a specially designated global terrorist the following month, according to the Department of Justice. Quote, "These designations made it a federal crime for Chiquita as a U.S. corporation to provide money to the AUC," the Justice Department said in a 2007 news release. Under Chiquita's plea agreement, the company was ordered in 2007 to pay a $25 million criminal fine, implement a compliance and ethics program, and agree to 5 years probation. The Department of Justice said that for years, Chiquita paid AUC in 2 regions of Colombia where Chiquita had banana-producing operations, Urabá and Santa Marta. Through its Colombian subsidiary known as Bananadex, the company paid the AUC nearly every month for about 6 years, 100 payments that amounted to over $1.7 million, the Department of Justice said. By 2003, Bananadex was the company's most profitable operation. The company had begun working with the AUC in 1997, following a meeting between the then leader of the AUC, Carlos Castaño, and a senior executive of Bananadex. Quote, Castaño implied that failure to make the payments could result in physical harm to Bananadex personnel and property, the Department of Justice added. Quote, Chiquita's payments to the AUC were reviewed and approved by senior executives of the corporation, including high-ranking officers, directors, and employees, close quote. The company paid the AUC by check for several years until June 2002, when Chiquita began paying directly and in cash, according to the Justice Department. Some payments were documented in corporate records as, quote, security payments, despite Chiquita never receiving actual security services. And from national news, Biden, Ukraine to sign new security agreement at G7, reported by Andrea Shalal and Jarrett Renshaw for Reuters. President Joe Biden will sign a new security agreement with Ukraine on Thursday to pledge America's long-term support to the country during his trip to Italy to meet with the Group of 7 leaders, a top U.S. official said. Biden departed for Italy on Wednesday to increase pressure on Russia over its war against Ukraine and on China for its support of Moscow and excess industrial capacity. The agreement will make clear, quote, our support will last long into the future, particularly in the defense and security space, close quote. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters aboard Air Force One. Quote, by signing this, we'll also be sending Russia a sign of our resolve. If Vladimir Putin thinks he can outlast the coalition supporting Ukraine, he's wrong, Sullivan said. 15 countries have signed the security agreement, which will strengthen Ukraine's defensive deterrence capability, he added. The White House had said earlier Biden will meet again with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky at the summit, followed by a joint press conference. The G7 leaders arrive at the summit confronting myriad woes at home, even as they seek solutions for many of the world's most pressing problems. The heads of the world's most developed democracy will address multiple challenges during the June 13th to 15th meeting, including wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, trade imbalances with China, threats posed by artificial intelligence, and development challenges in Africa. The leaders will also announce new sanctions and export controls against Russia that target entities and networks helping Putin's forces fight the war in Ukraine, White House spokesperson John Kirby said on Tuesday. Quote, we're going to continue to drive up costs for the Russian war machine, Kirby said. Washington plans to widen sanctions on the sale of semiconductor chips and other goods to Russia, with the goal of targeting third-party sellers in China, sources familiar with the plan said late on Tuesday. The administration will announce it is broadening existing export controls to include U.S.-branded goods, not just those made in the United States, the sources said. It will identify certain Hong Kong entities it says are shipping goods to Moscow. Shoring up funding for Ukraine will be a top priority at the G7 meeting, with the U.S. and European officials eager to lock in solutions ahead of a possible Trump re-election and the uncertainty it would raise over future U.S. support for Kiev. The group of 7 nations and the European Union are considering how to use profits generated by Russian assets immobilized in the West to provide Ukraine with a large upfront loan to secure Kiev's financing for 2025. Quote, we will announce new steps to unlock the value of the immobilized Russian sovereign assets to benefit Ukraine and to help them recover from the destruction that Mr. Putin's army has caused, Kirby said. Biden will press other G7 leaders to agree to an innovative plan to use future interests on some $281 billion of Russian central bank funds to back up a $50 billion loan to Ukraine. That's all we have time for today. This is Daphne Burt. I've been reading the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, June the 13th. Have a wonderful weekend in what's going to be some great weather.